Welcome back, true believers and all you spectacular Spidey fans, to another very exciting Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales related video, because today we have another in-depth discussion to go over relating to the game, especially because at the time of this recording, we're now exactly 10 days away until its worldwide release on November 12th, both on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, which is going to be very exciting for cross-gen players who may not be able to get the game with the day one release of the PS5, so you can instead play it on the PS4. But that's not what we're here to talk about today, because there is a lot of multiple aspects that we have seen quite a lot of footage of recently for Miles Morales in action, with the swinging, all of Game Informer's amazing coverage for the story, as well as the combat, and even recently, the official confirmation of the second pre-order suit of the game with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. We got a whole 10-minute long gameplay showcase, looked great, as well as showcasing some of the side missions that the game will entail. So because of all that, I am now joined by the one and only amazing Degenerate Jay, who you obviously know from YouTube, as well as his amazing Let's Play channel, Degenerate Plays, which you should definitely go and follow and subscribe to on Twitter, YouTube, and all the amazing social medias, because he definitely deserves all your support, where he covers a plethora of different topics on his channel, not just Spider-Man related, not just Batman related, but also a bunch of other amazing topics that I'm sure you will all love in full glory. But Jay is also a massive Spidey fan like myself, and I thought today we could talk about a lot of different aspects that we have seen so far for both Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales and Marvel Spider-Man Remastered exclusively for the PS5 that we are also very excited for, but may potentially have some issues with as well, because Jay has a very awesome insight about the game. We're both extremely hyped for both games, but still, there's always criticisms to be had in order to make the best game possible, and that is very apparent for both Marvel Spider-Man Remastered as well as Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. But still, at the same time, there's also a lot of things to be hyped about as well. So, Jay, for you, you've been kind of going back and forth with the Miles Morales coverage on your own end, getting excited about the suits, as well as the gameplay and the story. So for you personally, which element about the game would you say that you're looking forward to the most, as well as another element that you think are maybe a bit concerned about, or maybe have a bit of hesitation towards?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. Let me look at the little flow chart you left me. Let me see. Do make sure to mention these things. I, Evan, have a good relationship with Insomniac, so I need you to call them out on this. Okay, sorry. Maybe I wasn't supposed to read that out loud. No, I'm just kidding, man. I'm really happy to be here. Honestly, there's so many great things that I'm looking forward to in this game. I think a lot of people thought I wasn't looking forward to this game because the first coverage, I had some reveal coverage for it too, but I think probably the biggest thing I had to say about it was something everyone was saying, which we won't get too far into, which was the face for Peter Parker in the remaster, which I'm still just kind of, it's off to me, but I can put up with it. You know, it's whatever. It's not going to ruin the game for me. With the remaster, I know that my one thing with this game, though, that kind of concerns me just going forward is the story. I really hope that it's great. I hope that it's not just Spider-Man, but, you know, a little younger. I hope that it is actually personifying Miles as a standalone character, as his own person. And we know that sort of near the beginning, obviously, you know, there's going to be not spoilers for the full release, but just from some of the stuff Game Informer and some of these other companies have talked about and gotten information on, that Peter Parker leaves the story fairly early on, and then it becomes Miles focused. So my questions are kind of, is that going to be believable? Why Peter leaves? Would Peter leave Miles, like you said, kind of when you and I were talking off camera? Would Peter just leave Miles to the city himself when he's a young Spider-Man to sort of defend it? How is he going to define himself? And then how are these stories going to intertwine moving forward? Because we know Miles will be a big focus in the Insomniac Spider-Man universe.
Right, because what I find interesting is that they have gone back and forth between both Brians, which is funny. Brian Horton, who's the creative director of Miles, and Brian Intihar, who is the creative director of Spider-Man PS4, pretty much saying that this is their next big step into the Marvel Spider-Man Insomniac Universe franchise that they are creating. And if you want the full scope of the story, Miles Morales is going to be the next essential step within the lore of this game's world, which will then inevitably turn into the official sequel, of course, with Marvel's Spider-Man 2, whenever that releases, which I personally hope is only exclusive to PS5, which I do think is the first issue that I mainly have with Miles, is that it's great and very consumer-friendly that Miles is a cross-gen game, both on PS4 and PS5, and they also said they mainly developed it first on PlayStation 5 and kind of had to downscale it for the PS4. However, by the time the official sequel for Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is out, I'm assuming we're going to be 2022, maybe 2023. At that point, I really hope that Insomniac kind of moves on from the current gen system of the PlayStation 4, even though it is a great system in itself, but to have the official sequel fully run exclusively only on next-gen hardware with the PlayStation 5. That way, we will fully understand what the entire capabilities are of the PlayStation 5 console to truly create a complete next-gen Spider-Man experience. Miles is the first step. With that, into the ray-traced environments, the new gameplay, of course, the DualSense controller capabilities with the haptic feedback, which will also be included within Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered. But by the time that the official sequel comes out, they're not going to be limited to 2 different pieces of hardware on current gen and next gen. They will then fully have the opportunity to explore any possibilities with gameplay mechanics and story possibilities and not have those limitations that they had on current gen consoles. That way they'll have the entire next gen console, the PS5, at their complete disposal. Same thing with the story, is that now this is going to be a Miles-centric game first and foremost. However, we still have Peter's role shown briefly in the beginning of the game, which will then be taken out since he is going to be going in Symkaria with Mary Jane. So, I do hope that by the time that the official sequel comes out, they won't just kind of have Peter on the sidelines, but they'll still have some proper character development of Peter slightly within this game. Then they can fully evolve into the official sequel with Marvel's Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, too, that one difficulty, and I don't want to get too far into the MCU here, but one difficulty, too, is how we make these 2 characters stand apart but stand together as well, not to even just focus on that point. But so think about the MCU. Now, you and I have a little bit differing opinions, which might be an interesting video someday on that topic, but you have one big criticism of that universe interpretation of Spider-Man is, well, he is reliant on his mentor. So to me, it kind of makes me wonder, are we going to have that problem with Miles? Is Miles going to stand on his own and be able to grow over the course of this game so that then he stands independent by the end, and in the inevitable Marvel Spider-Man 2, Miles is still connected to Peter, but it's not just every time Miles fights a villain, it's cleaning up Peter's mess or someone that Peter fought or anything like that. You know, that's kind of something that I don't think really anyone wants to see. You would want to see a mixture, sort of some of Peter's villains, some of Miles's new villains, how he stands alone. And, you know, this isn't a concern. I guess this is going back and forth between positive and negatives. I do want to say one positive I've noticed with this whole thing is just the attention to detail. I think I noticed it the first time when you tweeted about it a while ago. Maybe it was a week or two ago, but it was about the web swinging. You know, Miles swings differently than Peter swings. He's a younger Spider-Man. He's obviously also probably a little more spry, even though it's by a few years, where he's more slender. His body hasn't actually developed quite as much into this big muscular person that Peter Parker actually sort of is. He's very thin, and he kind of flails around a little bit when he's swinging, because you have to think this is a kid who has been walking around on the ground his whole life, and now all of a sudden he's swinging from skyscrapers from basically a rope in his hands. You know, this is all new to him in a lot of ways. And so how do you translate those feelings of being a new Spider-Man, but also being competent and not just getting gunned down in your first fight? I think we're already seeing a lot of really cool details with that, where we see the web flailing. We see some different style animations with combat. He's very clearly skilled, but it doesn't look like he's using any sort of official fighting styles or anything like Peter would have developed over the years. He's just sort of doing his thing off instinct and off of whatever training he's also gotten from Peter. And so kind of how we see that going forward is going to be interesting to me. Maybe you can speak more clearly to that than I am as well.
Well, shout out to all the anime fans out there who will understand this reference. Miles is literally Deku, and Peter is All Might from My Hero Academia. Literally, my guy has Deku's shoot style in full force. This is going in full weeb territory, by the way.
I understood that reference.
It's very good. No, but it's great to see that Miles' Venom powers are fully developed in their own way as we progress through the story. which I love, but he's not limited to just Peter's training. Peter has helped guide Miles into kind of honing his skills as a hero of sorts and just kind of get the normal strategy on how to swing and how to fight properly. But since this is a Miles story, it's great because he's going to become Spider-Man in his own right. He's not going to have Peter hold his hand since he's not even going to be in New York City at all. So that's even showing even further how much Peter is relying on Miles to keep the city safe, and also how much Peter trusts Miles to become his own Spider-Man in his own way. Of course, to quote Into the Spider-Verse, "Don't do it like me, do it like you," and that's obviously very much applied here with Miles. He's very inexperienced with his swinging, he's still learning how to fight properly, and Peter Parker in Spider-Man PS4 was 23 years old, he was 8 years into his career as Spider-Man, he was in his prime, he still is here now in Miles' game, like we saw with the Rhino sequence, but Miles has only been Spider-Man for a little over a year at this point, and he's still learning. Even at that point, even after a full year, it's great that he's still in a way that he's capable enough to try and figure things out on his own, but he's still going to have to overcome the challenges he will face as his own Spider-Man, with that of the Tinkerer, with the normal villains he's going to fight in the city, how he's going to traverse around New York, of course, incorporating the Venom powers with his traversal, how that's going to operate. It's going to be very cool to explore as the player, but same thing, how he's going to have to deal with the side characters in the story, with his mom, Genki Lee, maybe Danica Hart, that side character Haley Cooper we know about, who we saw from Game Informer's coverage. All these characters and relationships that Miles is going to have to juggle, just like Peter did as Spider-Man, with now Miles as his own Spider-Man, is going to be very interesting to see a comparison in between of the two characters' representations. And I think that's where Insomniac is going full out on, to clarify to people, this is not just DLC, this is not just a normal spin-off game with nothing new added to it, this is its own full-on, standalone Miles game. If you're someone who wanted a Miles game throughout your entire life, this is it for sure. They're going to do complete justice to the character, they're individualizing him from Peter to make him feel completely different, and I think that the way on how they're going about it is very, very exciting with the possibilities that they could take. Of course, we already saw in the gameplay, he has the Mega Venom Blast incorporated in his moveset. So that shows how powerful Miles is going to become throughout the duration of the story, and how that could evolve with a character like, of course, mini spoiler, Aaron Davis as the Prowler, incorporated into Miles' core narrative as both Miles and Spider-Man. Again, having those worlds collide with one another is going to be very complex to dive into as the story progresses, and I'm very excited to see, for a fan of the characters myself, how that will divulge into possibly Miles' narrative progressing into the sequel, or if it'll just wrap up fully in Miles' own game.
I'm very excited to see that too. And one thing I actually, I probably don't know quite as much about this detail as you, so I thought I would just ask you while we're talking about this. I'm really excited about the world. Do you really know how much of the world is going to be the same and different? Because I know that they didn't want it to be the exact same city. You know, I mean, I know that it's going to be a little different here in Miles, but I don't really know how much. How much do we know about sort of the areas that you're going to comparatively? I know some of it is Harlem, isn't it?
Yeah, so Miles in the story is moving into Harlem with his mom after, sadly, the passing of Jefferson Davis, but they're moving back into Harlem because that's where his mom, Rio, grew up, in East Harlem specifically. And that is the big area that is kind of the crux of the whole narrative, because the big mega corporation Roxxon is setting up operation in East Harlem. But since Rio is running for city council candidate, she doesn't want Harlem to become this kind of run-down mega corporation site, but just have it thrive as the normal neighborhood she grew up in. And seeing how that's going to try and contrast between the daily life that Miles is living as this new citizen of Harlem, since before he kind of lived in the, Midtown area of Manhattan, since he attends Midtown High in the, Marvel Universe. It's going to be interesting to see how, as Brian Horton said, the creative director of the game, is that you as the player will experience Miles' journey growing up in Harlem, seeing how that progresses through the story, but seeing how throughout that narrative, Miles will turn into a person who loves Harlem as much as the player will. So you are going on this journey with Miles, understanding the culture and the perspective of the normal citizens of New York, and seeing what makes Harlem so special, and how Miles is also understanding how much that means to himself, since he's now a resident of that district of Manhattan. However, sadly for the city itself, like we were saying earlier, the whole city is still the main island of Manhattan. It just now has a Christmas/wintry aesthetic to make things feel a bit fresh, which is where my other slight criticism comes in, is that for the city as a whole, I do hope by the time that the official sequel comes out, because I do think it's safe to say they're not going to do this in Miles Morales, but again, this is why it's crucial that the official sequel is going to run exclusively on the PS5, only on next-gen hardware, because that way Insomniac will fully be able to do this, is, in the official sequel, I really hope that A, we get a full-on seamless day-nighttime cycle, where it can go from day to night seamlessly without loading times, and B, that we can explore the other islands of New York City, so Brooklyn and Queens, alongside of the main island of Manhattan. I do want to be able to go and explore more of the city that Insomniac have crafted within Marvel's New York and see how much they can flesh out further into the expansion of this universe down the line, especially since by the time the official sequel comes out, they'll probably have even more story beats to cover with Peter's story, since obviously this is a Miles Morales game, but by the time the official sequel comes out, that is going to be more of a Peter Parker-centric story, like they've said previously, of course, relating to the main foes they set up in the first game, with possibly Harry Osborn as Venom and Norman Osborn as Green Goblin, as well as Yuri Watanabe as the Wraith. There's a lot of potential here, a lot of possibilities. It's all very exciting, but if they want to cover that fully in a great way, I would hope that they can only do that exclusively on the PS5 and not on PS5 and PS4.
Yeah, I agree completely with that, because I think something a lot of people don't know about game development, and if you've gotten heavily into this in a previous video, I apologize if I ever missed it. With game development, they can say that they started with PS5 and worked down. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and believe that. But whenever you are working on a game, you have to look at what the lowest common denominator is in a lot of ways. And that's not to insult the base PS4. If you are a gamer who has the base PS4, guess what? Earlier today, I was playing my Wii U. I have fun on all these different things, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But let's say that they wanted to make a Switch game now, and let's say for some reason they were going to put it on Wii U as well. Well, they would either have to make two totally different versions of the game, and that's what they used to do, especially back with Sega, Genesis, stuff like that, and Nintendo. They'd be totally different games, or they would have to basically make one version and say, hey, what's the lowest common denominator? Oh, it's the Wii U. Okay, this has to be able to play on that as well, but it'll have way more detail on the next gen. And so you either end up with two different teams with porting, or you end up with one big team that's kind of split, trying to make it run best on the old thing. This is an issue that we've also seen as well with a lot of Xbox games coming up. A lot of different developers have been complaining, maybe not quite officially, but online and in other places, about how the fact that now, when you release a new game, at least if it's cross-generational, here's what you have to do. PC, PS4, it has to run on. PS4 Pro, it has to run on. It has to run on PS5. It has to run on Xbox One Original, Xbox One S, Xbox One X, Xbox Series X. There's all these different platforms if you're going cross-generational. And because Spider-Man is just PlayStation, at least it's only 3 boxes that these games have to run on. You have the version on the PS4 that has to run on the base PS4. It also has to run on the PS4 Pro. And then you have a different version that has to run on the PS5. But you have to think that that is all development time that could have gone a little differently if it was only on one system. So I'm totally fine with this sort of being the game that bridges generations and bridges consumer bases as well, because in a way that's what Miles is, right? It's bridging the gap between Spider-Man and telling a new story that then will eventually lead us deeper into the universe in Spider-Man 2. And I know that a lot of fans of these games are older like us, but a lot are also younger, and maybe they either don't want a PS5 right now or at all, or they can't afford one, or their parents can't afford one. We're in like a global bad situation here where no one really has a lot of money right now. So it's really nice of them to release it on a previous generation as well. I just wouldn't want to see that forever. And I think, not to speak to what you're saying, but I think that's kind of what you're saying too, right? It's like, it's not a big deal that it's here. It's just, we don't want it to be a pattern forever, because we want the game to be as amazing as it can possibly be. Because imagine if they had designed Spider-Man PS4 also for the PS3. It would have been a lot more held back by that old technology. And the technology's fun, but it is old.
Exactly. They can't go and juggle between two different generations, because one will be less benefited than the other, and in doing so would hinder both products. If they, again, to quote famous actor and amazing character Nick Offerman as Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation. Don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. And that's definitely what they should do by the time Marvel's Spider-Man 2 releases in the future, which again, I'm really hoping for, and Jay as well, is only on PS5. They would have to do that to make the best game possible for next gen. In doing so, we would get the best possible representation of these characters with Spider-Man for both Peter and Miles, as well as Venom, Green Goblin, Wraith, and mainly, my biggest hope is Peter in the black suit as, of course, symbiote Spider-Man. That is going to be a huge gameplay and story perspective, specifically with what Brian Intihar has said in previous interviews, is that, look, we know that this suit is majorly popular with the fans, but we are saving that for its own story. And of course, what story could that be than that of the official sequel? So when we get that down the line, it's going to be a huge payoff from the narrative perspective, as well as us as the player controlling Spider-Man in that way once he's donning that iconic suit within the Insomniac universe. Of course, with the addition of the DualSense controller providing the feeling of the symbiote, the intense strength and power you as the player will be able to have once controlling that beast as Spider-Man is going to be insane. So that is why I think the importance of next gen is going to be so crucial to the success of these ongoing Spider-Man games, plural, not just Miles, not just the remaster, not just Marvel Spider-Man 2, but whatever other Marvel games Marvel in general decides to make, with Marvel's Avengers going on next gen as well, whenever Marvel Spider-Man 3, Marvel Spider-Man 4, how many Spider-Man games we get down the line, and of course even for other superhero games like Suicide Squad and Gotham Knights once they arrive on next gen too. The importance of that, of having the player feel more immersed as these characters, is going to be a huge factor when it comes to the feeling of controlling these iconic heroes in the best way possible. And I can't wait to see how Insomniac specifically will incorporate that for someone as important and as iconic as Spider-Man.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The thing is, too, I mean, we were talking about positives and negatives. I don't know if I really have many more negatives at all. I mean, there's always things that I worry a little bit about whenever any game is released. There's sort of two different camps with Spidey fans. I've made some jabs occasionally as a joke about how Spidey fans are very protective of Spider-Man. And in a lot of ways, that's a good thing, I think, because they want the best for the character. They want the best possible thing to come out. I do think as well that it's kind of like, if this comes out and it wasn't good, the community would definitely let them know. And I think Insomniac knows that. I think they know what worked for their first game. And I think that it is in very competent hands. Are there ever decisions that are made that I don't agree with? Sure. You know, the face was one of them. It's not a massive deal to me where I'm just super pissed, but do I agree with it? Not really, but it's their decision to make. And I will say when I don't agree with something, but if it doesn't impede the game, or at least much, I can look the other way on it. As long as we don't have too many things in this game that come up that are like, ooh, that could have been better, I'm probably going to have a really fun time. And Miles has become wildly popular as well over the last few years. So I think that is really going to help them as well. I think this is sort of the perfect storm, dude. I mean, we had obviously his introduction in the comics years ago, which some people loved, some people hated. And then over time, he's been incorporated in mainline Marvel comics. And then we had Spider-Verse, which I think really introduced the wider world to who Miles Morales is. And now it's Insomniac's turn to sort of show people, hey, this is our Miles, but he's still true to the heart of who Miles Morales is in any universe. He's a good person trying his best. He is not perfect. He's not Peter, but they're a lot alike. And this is how they're the same. This is how they're different. And this is what makes him Miles. I think that's sort of the stuff that I want to see going into this. I want to love the story. I want to just have a fun time, unplug, be in that world, be in New York. I'm glad that some things are different with the map. Obviously, like you said, I do hope eventually we can move into other islands, because a big critique I did have of City That Never Sleeps was just reusing locations over and over. So I do hope that eventually we can kind of move more away from that. But also I know that these are very difficult things to develop, and it's hard as Insomniac, I'm sure, not to use a world that you already fully developed. So, I mean, it goes back and forth. There's a lot of positives, a lot of negatives. I'm super excited for the game. And I'm not ending the conversation, but is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I don't know if there's anything off the top of my head else that I have.
I would just say two things to wrap it up on my end, is that one, in regards to, of course, the infamous Peter face, which I've already said so much on. You guys already know me. But as a small update, and I'll try and find the tweet and put it on screen so you guys can see it as well, someone asked, specifically a developer at Insomniac by the name of Diego Terran, who I actually have been able to communicate with previously. He was a part of one of the Spidey Squad live streams, which was awesome, and he actually was in the chat talking to us about his excitement for just Spider-Man in general, and he was super cool about it. But someone asked specifically, not me, don't worry, it was someone else, asking him on Twitter, will there be a possibility that you could upgrade Peter's face? Not change it back to John Bubniak, who I love and I wish was back, but simply make him look a bit older, make him feel a bit more mature, given this current version of Peter Parker. He's 23 years old, he's been Spider-Man for 8 years, he's in his prime, and he's not a high school student, which the problem is that this simply looks like a Tom Holland deepfake with the new face. However,
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland, totally. Perfection. Everyone loves it, except for me. But what Diego said online is pretty much we will have to wait and see as to how exactly the character model could look a bit different. So maybe, even though Insomniac said they're not going to go back to the John Bubniak face model for Peter Parker, they might have taken in a lot of fans' concerns and overall disdain for the new face compared to John and try and maybe improve upon it for the full release. Even though Miles Morales has already gone gold, they have said that there is going to be a day one patch for the game for both Miles Morales on PS4 and PS5, and we do know that the new Peter model is going to be on both versions. So people are thinking, well, if the PS4 version had John Bubniak and Spider-Man PS4, does that mean that the PS4 version of Miles is going to have the new model, the old model, and it actually turns out it is going to be the new model for both versions of the game? Still, based on Diego's response, it does hopefully seem like they might be adding a bit more polish to Miles' character, as well as Peter's face model in general, to maybe fix and match the aesthetic of the current version of the character that they have created from the first game into now. Of course, I would love John to come back. No ill intent towards the new model, of course. We all are very interested to see how Ben Jordan will reprise the role as Peter Parker through the face, but still, I think John encapsulated the perfect version of Peter with the story they told from the first game, and seeing him kind of go away and have him be now replaced with Ben Jordan is going to be very jarring to get used to. But on top of that, to sum it up from my end, is that I really love that Insomniac is doing a full game about Miles. I mean, you would never think in a million years that we'd get a standalone Miles Morales game solely based on this character, who's not even a decade old yet. He was created in 2011. He's getting his own standalone game. He just got an Oscar award-winning movie in 2018, and now he's, coming on to next gen as the first superhero game on PlayStation 5. Not even a Spider-Man 2, but a Miles Morales Spider-Man game leading the launch of a brand new next-gen console. I think, in my opinion, that is a testament to how important this character is to a lot of people, and just how much faith Insomniac themselves have within this character, and how far they can take him into the future of the Spider-Man franchise. And seeing how much people love Peter as Spider-Man, and seeing how they're going to fall in love with this character all over again, but not with Peter, but for Miles as Spider-Man, is going to be very impactful and emotional for me as a Spidey fan myself to see unfold. Because I know a lot of people connected to even Kamala Khan from the Marvel's Avengers game on a very emotional level because of the character representation that the writers at Crystal Dynamics did, but also seeing that Puerto Rican heritage as well as African American heritage be fully displayed for Miles is beautiful to see, and resonate with so many people is a triumph in and of itself. So I think Insomniac should be very proud with what they've done so far. I just really hope that the final product can fully deliver a grand slam landing by the time it launches, but I personally think it will for sure. And I, for one, and I'm sure Jay too, can't wait to actually play the game for ourselves on November 12th.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I think too that one of the best things about Spider-Man is that really, and I don't want to make a controversial statement, but Spider-Man can be anyone under the mask. It's just someone trying their best. I know Peter Parker is very important, Miles is very important, but Miles goes to show that, like Peter Parker is not the only shot at being Spider-Man. Spider-Man is sort of, not to steal the Dark Knight, but it's a bit of an idea. It's someone trying their best to make the world a better place. A little bit at the time, they're not perfect. They fail, they fall. They do everything that they can to live up to the good people in their life and be the best person they possibly can. And I think that so far we've already seen Miles is that. We saw that in the first game. We've seen that Peter definitely is that. And they are very different, but their stories will tie together in a really cool way. I think it's great. I think that this really does, hopefully, in my opinion, start to build the cornerstones of a universe, not just even Spider-Man. I would love it if we could see other characters in this version of New York or in this world with Insomniac at some point. If we saw Daredevil or if we saw Punisher, anyone, just not tacked on, but maybe in their own short Miles Morales type entry that shows that things exist. We know the Avengers exist in this world. We know that all kinds of characters exist in this world. And that's one thing that I love about it. It feels lived in, it feels alive. And I hope that over time, no matter what direction Insomniac decides to take it, that they continue to breathe new life into this world, life into these characters, and make new Spider-Man fans who are not only interested in just the game, but who are, this is kind of their gateway to the character. They get into the comics or they get into the movies or the cartoons or whatever. And these games, so far, at least from what I've seen of Miles and what I experienced of the first game, they know the heart of Spider-Man. They know who he is in the same way that the Raimi movies were able to capture that in some way, at least, to give you that spark of the heart of Spider-Man as a character and get you invested in him beyond that property. I think that's one of the best things Insomniac did with the original Spider-Man for PS4. I think that we saw that actually from Sony with Spider-Verse. I think it's been a great couple of years for Spider-Man in those ways to get new people interested in the character. And to wrap it up on my end, I'm just really excited for this. I have mostly good things to say. I always have, the few, but what if? But I know Insomniac knows what they're doing for the most part, and I'm really excited to see what that is actually in the end.
And with all that said, everyone, that is the video that we have for you today. Thank you so much to Degenerate Jay for actually being able to tune in to this amazing collab, for without him, this video would not be possible. It's just a blast to talk to an amazing fan such as yourself about this character because of how much he means to both of us. It's just the best feeling for me as a fan to talk to someone who loves him just as much, if not more, than myself. And seeing how close we are, 10 days until launch at the time of this recording, that is insane. Hopefully the hype just gets more and more crazy from here, and with how close we are, it's going to be a blast to play this game for ourselves when the time comes. But with all that said, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Please let us know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. Again, all of Jay's social media tabs for YouTube, Twitter, and so on will be in the links in the description below, so definitely go and support him as much as you can because he definitely deserves it. And until next time, true believers, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy. But until next time, peace out.
Bye, everyone.